Hi, I'm here today with Stuart Craig from We Sell Homes in Paradise. Stuart is a long-term friend and collaborator with Fluent Finance Abroad. Hello, Stuart.
Hey, Mark. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. Thank you for coming all the way to Marbella today to do this interview with us. So, Stuart, you've been in the real estate business. I've known you for the last 7 or 8 years in the real estate business. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and why you're here.
Okay, I'll give you the long story short. I'm probably an atypical real estate agent. I've had some different backgrounds, some different careers. So I went to college in America, in Florida, and I then got into finance and banking. I worked for UBS for a number of years. Then I also worked in shipping as a shipbroker, so to speak, for Maersk, a very large Danish company. And then my wife really wanted us to return to Spain where we met. And then we came back about 6 or 7 years ago and we opened our boutique agency, We Sell Homes in Paradise, down in Sotogrande area. We also have a branch in Marbella East as well with my partner Timo and Anna. But yeah, that's the long story short.
And where were you before you moved here?
Living in Denmark, in Copenhagen.
Okay, and what was the catalyst for you to actually up sticks and move here?
Long, dark Danish winters. So my wife is actually Danish and she would always be craving returning to Spain. So we just went for it.
What is your connection to Torre Guadiaro? What's your connection to Sotogrande?
One of my previous careers, I owned a number of restaurants and we had one in Sotogrande and I loved Sotogrande. That's where I met my wife. So there's real sentimental value. We got married in Torre Guadiaro. It's just a place we've been coming back to every summer holiday for a number of years, and we just thought that's the place for us.
So when you moved, was it your intention to get involved in the real estate business?
Well, I have a sales and marketing background, and obviously there aren't that many industries here in southern Spain, and I believe I could do it quite well. And so I thought, why not? And of course, the proof is in the pudding. I believe in longevity, playing the long game, and we've been doing it for 6 or 7 years to a moderate degree of success. I think we made a good decision.
Now, you mentioned before that you worked in banking.
Yeah.
You worked for UBS. What did you do there?
Well, back in the day, we used to have a desk called the Cash Collateral Trading Desk. And on the back of trading any security, bonds, stocks, there's always a cash implication. You sell $200 billion worth of bonds, there's $200 billion worth of cash you have to deal with. And we would provide funding for all the internal desks. So let's say they were long cash, they would give us their cash. We'd put it out in the market and try and generate a better interest rate. And that way make a little bit of spread for our desk. So it's all about overnight interest rates in multiple currencies.
You chose to get into real estate. Obviously, real estate is a type of investment. So what was it that you saw value that you could bring to the real estate market?
Well, I think real estate is a really good hedge for inflation. I'm big on this, right? And not just inflation, debasement as well. So I've always been an investor in property. And given my trading background, it wasn't really where I made my money. It was buying and holding properties, be it in Brixton in London, in Clapham, even in Denmark, where we had our family home in Hellerup. We've always doubled our money in properties, and that's been how we've managed to create a nice life for ourselves.
You see the area that you're in a good area for you to invest in property?
Yeah, I do. So I always say skate to where the puck is going to be.
Okay.
We're in Marbella right now, and I think there's obviously beautiful properties in Marbella, but it's quite an expensive area, right? If you look at the price per square meter. We're seeing it in our little agency, a lot of Marbella agents coming down towards the Sotogrande area because you just get more bang for your buck, especially the stretch between Estepona to Sotogrande. Within the gated community of Sotogrande, yes, there are prices that compete with Marbella, but you tend to get larger plots. So you get a bigger space, living space for the same equivalent price in perhaps Marbella. It's a different way of life. It's whatever floats your boat. Our customers prefer a quieter life. It's very much about sports, social interactions, barbecues with friends. It's about the schools. Sotogrande International School is a huge draw. It's whatever is your cup of tea, and our clients prefer that quieter life.
I want to explore what you just said there before then about investing in real estate is good as a hedge for inflation. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, first we need to differentiate between inflation and debasement. We kind of loosely use those terms, right? what happens, and I was explaining this to my kids, actually, it's just quite funny. Let me explain how I'd explain to a kid to you, right? So you're on an island, there's 3 of you, right? The only thing that you can forage are coconuts. So you each manage to get 1 coconut, but you're starving, okay? A local shows up with a fish. How much would you pay for that fish?
Everything I've got, right? Which
Yeah.
is 1 coconut.
1 coconut. Suddenly the wind blows, 3 coconuts fall down. You've each got 2 coconuts. How much would you pay for that fish?
Again, 2, yeah.
2 coconuts. What's changed? The supply of the underlying currency. And this is what people don't understand. We've got governments in debt. They're printing more money, especially after COVID. So the M2 money supply, if you've ever heard of that terminology, will increase more. And that just means asset prices go up. So hard assets, fixed assets, things with quite high stock to flow ratio, they continue to grow in value. So if you're worried about the purchasing power of your money, don't put it in the bank, put it in a hard asset. That's why real estate's a good investment.
What we're seeing, I think, on the news and every day, and young people as well, is that unfortunately a career isn't going to give you enough of a safety net. So you've got to look at investing in different things, and real estate is a safe and secure way of doing that, right?
Yeah. I mean, I like to speak with data. I mean, you can plot graphs, you can Google this right now and look at how salaries have grown since the 70s against asset prices. Asset prices keep shooting up. The actual real value of salaries is declining. So it makes it even harder for you to get on the property ladder because your salaries just don't keep up. So you mentioned young people. Young people need to get invested so that they can make enough money to have a deposit to then buy a house. Because we all need a shelter. We all need a roof over our head. We're never going to discount the value of a house, but how you get there has got to change.
So what's the most important thing in your view that any potential Spanish property investor should consider right now?
I believe, as I mentioned earlier, skate to where the puck's going to be, so relative value. I believe, as Warren Buffett would say, in moats, something unique that's a barrier to entry. For example, my place, I bought in Torre Guadiaro, an ugly, sleepy beachside town, but it's got a natural moat. The A7 was redirected round the back, which effectively means that this town is landlocked by the sea. There's no more capacity to build lots more in the area. So if you love the town, what you see is what you get. And that means my house has done pretty well. You did a valuation recently as we remortgaged it, and it did pretty well. So that's what you need to look for. Unique, scarce assets. I love coastal properties as well because Ley de Costa is your moat. There's not much you can do. You can't expand, but if you buy and other people also want to have a beachfront property, the demand increases and the price of your property goes up as well as your rental income. So I think these are unique properties.
How long do you think a person should be invested before they actually start realizing?
5 to 10 years. I mean, there's a really good rule of 72, and I've got this kind of trading mindset, and it's all about how long does it take to double your money, right? So let's say you have a 7% compound annual growth rate. If you divide 72 by 7, it's approximately 10 years. So that says it takes you 10 years to double your money. You want to find areas where you double your money faster. Okay, and that's back to my point about beachfront properties, certain areas with a moat, a natural moat, perhaps being inside the gated community of Sotogrande. But you can only realize this growth after 5 to 10 years because there will be corrections and ups and downs as always. But normally that's a time frame.
So the property market in Spain's been going, it's been going up since 2012.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've seen a quite a dramatic trend upwards. We saw a very dramatic trend after 2008 downwards. So obviously there is risk there. What do you say to people that say, Spanish property is about to go down?
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of customers ask us that question. Some of them are expecting a crash, but I would actually argue the crash has already happened.
Okay.
And I don't mean in property prices. I mean in your purchasing power. It's back to this whole debasement thing. You know yourself when you go to the supermarket how much more it costs you to buy your weekly groceries. Yeah. You've seen the prices continue to rise in properties here. And that's going back to my coconut example. It's because governments are in debt. They have to print more money. Assets that are hard keep going up in price. It's a fact. So I don't think the crash is as most people perceive it.
In property?
I don't think the prices will come down per se, but what you can effectively buy for the same salary has crashed.
Yeah,
Okay.
so your actual buying power is getting less and less every year.
Exactly. I mean, if you want to look at the whole macroeconomic situation, you know, we have, I think the global debt is $320 trillion. It's massive. Governments are in debt. We're in debt, debt to GDP is 300% on average, something like this. So if governments are in masses of debt, what is their solution? Well, they can't do much, maybe raise taxes.
Yeah.
The other option is to print more money and inflate away that debt. And that goes back to the point why asset prices keep rising.
It seems like a bit of a vicious circle, doesn't it? Where governments can't raise taxes to a level because they will just lose the votes. And so the only option they've got is to carry on this cycle of printing money.
I mean, on your point, right, it all triggered from a 2008 Great Recession, right?
Yeah.
We basically had a debt jubilee where banks, central banks, lent at 0% interest. It's like a debt jubilee, right? And they would roll that debt every 4 years.
Yeah.
And now interest rates have gone up. Now some countries, like the USA, for example, they'll pay more in their interest rate expense than they will on their national defense, because I think they're $35 trillion in debt.
Which is huge.
Yeah. So again, they're going to have to reduce the rates to then refinance that debt and also increase that debt. And that's the cycle we're in.
Your point there about governments being so heavily in debt.
Yeah.
And there's no way they're going to reduce that debt down.
Well, obviously you see Elon Musk with the Doge idea, Department of Government Efficiency. Of course, most governments will do something similar, try to be more efficient. You've seen Javier Milei in Argentina really do great things there. So that is a really good idea, but it's small potatoes in comparison to the entire debt that governments have.
Yeah. Governments are going to bring down rates.
They have to.
They have to because they can't service their debt with high interest rates.
Exactly.
So that tells us is that we're going to have another period of ultra low interest rates, which is good for mortgages.
However, typically prices and interest rates work in opposite directions. As interest rates come down, prices go up. So even though perhaps your clients will have more affordability, so to speak, it will be on a ticket price much higher because the prices of the asset will go up. So I always say, better the devil you know, try and get the mortgage now in the current environment.
Exactly, and we just did a little bit of work together on your one, right? So
Yeah.
you managed to get a new deal. You don't have to go into.
I don't mind. I think it's one of the best deals I've ever got. Thank you for that.
The rest want to tell us about that then?
Well, look, I used to have a variable rate interest mortgage with Bank Inter, and you fixed it. You got us a fixed rate mortgage at under 3% for 28 years.
Yeah.
And, you know, I know what I pay a month. Let's just say 1,300 euros for argument's sake. That 1,300 euros in 10 years' time will be peanuts.
Well, that 1,300 euros in 10 years' time will still be 1,300 euros.
Exactly.
And everything that we've just discussed and what you've just mentioned about the cost of everything going up, that just means that that is a beautiful hedge against. So in real terms, that 1,300 euros today will not be the same amount.
It will be about 650 euro equivalent in today's money. So in the future.
Yeah. So it's actually not only, so the actual price of the mortgage is actually going to go down in real terms.
I mean, I always talk about hedging my position. What if something were to go wrong, right? So we have this villa, and let's say I lost my job, the business did really badly. I know that I could probably rent out that house now at 2 or 3 times my mortgage rate. In the future, I could probably rent it out in 10 years' time at 4 or 5 times my mortgage rate. So it makes me sleep well at night. So that's effectively what you've done for me. You've helped me sleep well at night.
Well, that's good. I'm glad that I've been able to help you with that. But you can see that's kind of like, so you're already thinking 10, 15, 20 years down the line.
Yeah.
And you're thinking of holding that property for that long.
Yeah. I believe in holding assets because obviously if you sell assets, of course, there are some capital gains initiatives over 65, no capital gains. If you reinvest after 3 years, no capital gains. But I like holding on to my assets and, potentially renting out when we downsize to a small apartment, which we have.
It's also good financial planning, holding assets, isn't it? I mean, you know, we were talking earlier before, you know, people don't really invest in pensions anymore because for whatever bad press that they've had. And people haven't managed their pension funds very well. Now, if you're going to rent your property out in 20 years' time, that's going to give you an income in retirement.
Exactly right. It's funny you say that. I actually sold a pension in Denmark to buy a small apartment in Torre Guadiaro. That's how little I believe in pensions. Okay, but it's the truth. I'm not a guy that just talks the talk. I actually walk the walk. I mean, I think I was calculated to earn 30,000 euros a year from that pension by the time I turned 65. I'm 48 now.
The message that I'm hearing from you is Spanish property going to crash? Essentially, you don't think so, but is now a good time to buy? Well, yes, because your actual earning power is actually getting less and less every year. So you've got to get invested into assets sooner rather than later. Is that what you're saying?
Pretty much, yeah. And I know it sounds really difficult because I am in the business of selling properties, but I also do it myself, right? So I hope my conviction comes through.
Yeah. And I think most people that have invested in property over the long run have done pretty well out of it, right?
Yeah. Of course, we've talked about the hold period, 5 to 10 years, right?
Yeah. It's not always the case, but I mean, yeah, it depends.
Obviously, it's better if you can fix your mortgage. So
Definitely. If you can
I know it's not always available, especially if you're earning in different currencies. But if you can, you can.
if you can.
Even if you can't, right, it's still not bad rates right now. What is the variable rate right now?
But the Euribor rate at the moment is crept. It's around about 2.3 to 2.35 at the moment.
And there's normally a 1 percentage point spread on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're getting it under 3.5% variable rate.
But knowing what we know, that governments have huge amounts of debt, and they can't afford for rates to stay high for long. No, they're going to be pushing them down. And we heard Trump last week say that he's demanding the Fed to cut interest rates because they are very high in the States right now. All right, so get back onto you and your business. You called your company We Sell Homes in Paradise, which is strange. I thought you'd say We Sell Homes in Torre Guadiaro. Why that name?
Well, it came about my business partner and I, Timo, are on the golf course. He's German. A lot of companies in Germany have names like we provide insurance, we sell used cars. So we actually were geared more towards the German market. So we created We Sell Homes, but we wanted to put a final element to it. And at the same time, on the golf course, on the 9th hole, we just said, where are we? And we both agreed we were in Paradise. And I'm like, well, why shouldn't we sell homes in Paradise? And it just kind of stuck.
Okay.
So
go on then. So what, I've seen a video of you where you talk about your idea of paradise. So tell us, what is your idea and why do you think you're in
Paradise here?
Yeah.
Well, I think in your introduction, you mentioned me traveling a lot, and I've lived in different places in Singapore, I've lived in Florida, Connecticut, Denmark. And there are all these idyllic ideas of paradise sitting under a coconut tree on an isolated beach, but they're not really practical, especially for a guy with kids. So I think paradise also needs to have some practicality behind it.
Yeah.
And I think here in Spain, you've got 8 or 10 things which make it a very practical paradise. One, the cost of living is pretty good, right? Especially if you compare it to the US or England. 2, it's very safe and secure. So you could be in, I don't know, Colombia, probably better beaches there, but it's not very safe and secure, right?
No.
3, I think you need to have some kind of community element to it all. We're human beings are social animals. So if you're isolated on a beach, who are you going to discuss things with? So you need to be with like-minded people. And many people that expatriate here are pretty similar, right? Done quite well, decided to take a chance on life, move their family to southern Spain. So there's automatically things to talk about, yeah? And I think you need some form of infrastructure, nice road system, and also connectivity. So let's say you want to use the Costa del Sol as a launch pad to the rest of Europe. It's very easy to travel from Malaga to go to Berlin for a weekend away or something like this, which makes it quite interesting. A big draw, of course, is sunshine.
Of course, yeah.
Sunshine, I mean, some people argue we have 320 days of sunshine a year. I'm more conservative. Let me say 300. Still not bad, right?
There's a lot of vitamin D right there, right?
A lot of vitamin D and the activities you can actually do. You know, you can play golf, paddle, you can go horse riding, you can go hiking. There's so much that you can do, which I guess leads itself onto my next point, which when people think of paradise, it's a lot about nature, greenery. You know, we have customers that come down here from Costa Blanca who are amazed at how green the Costa del Sol is. You know, we've got mountains, we've got beautiful beaches, we've got everything in between. So yeah, there's loads of reasons why I think this is a practical paradise.
Yeah. I mean, you've put here, just to reflect, I made some notes. So you made modern comforts, obviously the internet and everything else like that, which is, you know, really,
Absolutely, yeah.
your mod cons in your kitchen and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, I'm a man of convenience, right? I want to know if my, I pop the tire of my car, I can fix that easily. Yeah, that's important to me. I don't want to commute. My commute right now is 2 minutes down a hill. It used to be an hour on the tube in London. These sorts of things make a paradise as well.
So we're coming towards the end. What's your thoughts on Spanish real estate market or your particular market for the next 5 years? What's happening? What plans are there, and how do you see it going?
Well, I think we've got about 5 or 6 years of a good market, okay? Sotogrande in particular, even more specific, my little town, which is landlocked, locked against the sea. There's a big developer called Acciona who have come to town. They're building a 100-room hotel and 100 properties in our town, okay? Now, follow the smart money, the whales. A big company like Acciona would not be investing in Torre Guadiaro unless they believe there was some intrinsic demand down the road, right? Similarly, we hear stories about Sotogrande being sold to the Saudis. A Saudi sovereign fund would not buy into just any asset. It has to be a proven asset. And I think, again, they also see the demand that's coming down the road. And Sotogrande is one of the best gated communities in Spain, if not in Western Europe. You know, it's very hard to find anything similar. So there's value in that. It is quite unique. And again, back to scarcity. To own a property within the gated community is quite a unique thing. The school is a massive draw. Okay, I can't remember. I think it's got 1,200 students right now, and I believe they're expanding.
There's rumored to be another school.
Yeah, I heard about the Iago International School. I don't know if it's true in Alcadesa. So things are moving west. Obviously, Marbella is quite expensive, but it's closer to Malaga Airport. But if you don't mind another 30 minutes on the Carretera, then you can find more value down our end. And people are getting wise to that. Sotogrande used to be the best kept secret. It's no longer a secret.
No.
People know about it now.
Yeah. So you see the future being quite good, and if you can get in.
I do. Look, it's always difficult because I don't want to come across as selling, but this is back to my point of owning a couple of properties in this area. So I have conviction, right? Yeah. I do believe it's moving further west because you can get more value further west. And I do believe there's a lot of people, particularly expats living in the Middle East or Singapore, who want to recreate that expat life in Europe. And Sotogrande is a great way to do that. And even if you can't live within the gated community of Sotogrande, the area around San Roque Club, Alcaidesa, Torre Guadiaro, even Punta Chilera, the prices are going to rise because of the demand. So Sotogrande is somewhat of an epicenter, and it has a belt around it, which we could term Greater Sotogrande, for instance.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that will do very well.
One thing that I know, I've noticed, is that there is more room to breathe down your end. I live in Estepona, well, more San Pedro Estepona, and the decrease in traffic when you leave my house to go towards Sotogrande and our office in Pueblo Nuevo is incredible. And if we have to go to Malaga for whatever reason on Marbella, it's an absolute nightmare. So that space.
I mean, if you wanted to do the oldest trick in the book, trying to show customers on a viewing tour, you get on the A7 between Puerto Banús and Guadalmina, chock-a-block every time, and you get the other side of Estepona between Estepona and Casares, open, wide open, even with sea views from the Carretera.
As a family, we live closer to Marbella than we do to Estepona, but we always go Estepona.
Yeah.
Purely because there's more space.
So yeah, there's a lot to be said.
There's a lot to be said, and we're quite lucky, aren't we? And I agree with you. We do, in our own little way. This is when you put all the 10 different points that you make about what constitutes a paradise. I think we're pretty lucky in the sense I'm sure there's some other places that could rival where we are, but nowhere really that can
No.
match here, I think.
I think one thing to make very clear is Spain's a great place to spend your money. There's not many jobs here, right? So it's a great place to come with money.
Yeah.
Okay, but probably the best place to spend your money and have a great life. But if you're coming here to work, I don't know how many opportunities there are. But anyway, there's a lot of people doing the digital nomad. You have some customers that we've presented to you on the digital nomad visa. And so there are ways where you can have this lifestyle.
Well, the world's changed now since the pandemic, hasn't it? And we all realise now that you can work from pretty much anywhere. And if you're involved in, if you have a phone, laptop, and a really good internet connection, you can do pretty much any job
Yeah, very true.
anywhere.
Well, take my rental property I have. I used to do short-term rentals and I would project maybe 25 weeks per year. It changed on its head after COVID, 32, 35 weeks a year, because people came for these longer stays in winter months. So it really transformed the coast, year-round place.
Okay, Stuart.
Thank you.
Call that a day now, yeah.
Yeah, it was good fun. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Cheers.